Okay, sorry.
Yes, so we are, I'll just repeat that. We're very excited to have kind of 4 strategic goals now for the International Women in Biomechanics group. Member support, which is led by Kat Daniels and Kirsten McDonald. Community outreach, which is led by Sarah Kessler. Empowering allies, which is led by Caitlin Banks. And kind of sustainable organization, making us an official group, which is really led by Jana Montgomery. So we'd just like to introduce you to the team. So thank you so much to all of our volunteers who are helping make this and the organization that it is, like providing content and growing IWB. Like I said, Christy and Kat are leading this group, and we have Rossi, Nikita, Brecca, Ramanda, Katie, and Alexa. And so you might be seeing their names as they develop initiatives like the blog and the newsletters that we have planned, monthly meetings. So just wanted to introduce you to our team here so you can put some faces to names. In community outreach, you kind of heard their names before, but they've been leading the Twitter and the Instagram. That's Armida, Freya, Sarah, and Laura. And of course, led by our fearless Sarah Kessler. And Empowering Allies is a new group led by Caitlin Banks, and got Aurelie and Laura Ann that are helping us work on getting our huge group of ally supporters on board and bringing them into the conversation as well. And then if you are interested in helping join any of these teams and any of these subgroups, feel free to email our Gmail, and we'd be happy to have you join. And if you have any ideas, please reach out to any of us. We're available on Slack and Gmail and these meetings and anywhere you can find us. All right, I'll pass it to Alexa now. She has an announcement about the blog.
Hi, everybody. So we are getting a blog started, and we are looking for people who are interested in writing a blog. So this is kind of just like a general outreach of, hey, we're starting a blog, and if you have any interest whatsoever in writing a blog that can be anywhere from like 250 words to who knows what, we just want you to contact us and let us know that you might be interested. In no way is this a commitment. There's kind of a list of some of our general blog topics that we have a bunch of subtopics, ideas under. So when you kind of narrow down where your interest might be in writing, then we'll kind of reach out to you and see where it goes from there. And if at any time you're like, no, I don't think this is my thing, then no harm, no foul. So we just want to know who might be interested in writing a blog for us. I will post a link to everybody in the chat. That's a Google form. That's just 3 simple questions like name, email, and which of these general blog topics are you interested in? And then we'll kind of get back to you in the next couple of weeks. I'm also going to put this in a Slack channel for people who weren't here today, but so I will drop that in the chat in just a couple of seconds. So if you're interested anywhere in writing a blog post, we would love to have your help.
Thanks, Alexa. Awesome. All right, and then we have a new channel. I'm going to pass it to you, Dr. Katie.
Hi, thanks, Anna. So we are starting this new channel, and maybe some people saw this journal article that came out, but in the biomedical engineering, they had this publication about creating citation diversity statements for their journal articles. And I just thought this was super cool, but the idea was kind of looking at who's actually cited in each article and kind of disclosing, like, with the idea that I think we're well aware that in general, citations tend to be biased. Like most often it is white men who are cited. And so creating these statements to actually intentionally track how many women and how many people of color are lead or last authors on the paper cited. So the idea for the new channel is kind of based on this article, and as an effort to kind of more proactively cite women in biomechanics, especially, which is what we have here, is to have this channel where if you are writing something like a journal paper, to say what you're writing about and kind of call out for members to chime in if they've written anything on the topic. So if you're kind of writing a paper on a specific topic, I'd ask you to come to this channel, list kind of what your general research areas, interests are, and ask members if they've written something on this topic or maybe know something someone else has written, just as a chance to kind of, one, we can promote each other by citing the women in this group, and also, another chance to kind of shout out the awesome research that everyone's doing. So I will post the link to this article about diversity statements in our Slack, but just want to let everyone know that we're starting up this Cite Women channel, and if you can, I think you have to go like browse channels and add it to yours, but we'll start some vlogs. And if anyone's out there writing something, please post, and let's start kind of sharing some articles. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, and one other thing is our next meeting, we're hoping to put together research talks. So if you're interested kind of along this idea of sharing your research with this international audience, please, I'll post again in the chat a Google form you can fill out and let us know if you'd like to share your research with the group, because that's part of our interest in increasing representation of women in this field. It's good practice, and it's a friendly audience to get feedback. So one other thing is, last announcement is, we are working with the ASB 2021 diversity group. There's going to be, like every year, there's a Women in Science event, and this year's theme is advocating for changes and improvements in your environment. So if you know a woman in her field, it doesn't have to be academia, but somebody that has successfully done this, advocated and changed their environment for the better, please nominate them to be a panelist for our Women in Science event. We are looking for an international audience, so it doesn't have to be just American Society of Biomechanics members. So let me know if you have any panelists that jump out when you hear that theme. All right, and then I'm going to pass it to you, Jana, to introduce our amazing keynote speaker.
Awesome, thanks, Anna. Yeah, so I'm super excited to have Kelly here to chat with us today and tell us about her journey with entrepreneurship and fitness and being a woman in both of these spaces and kind of bucking all the stereotypes. I'm super excited. I came across Kelly a few years ago when she was sponsored by Oiselle, because I had a good friend who was sponsored by Oiselle. And I was in this place where I'm like, I live in Boulder. I tried to fancy myself an athlete, and then literally everyone I know is like an Olympian. And I'm like, maybe I'm not that good. And so I always hesitate, like, oh, I'm an academic, but I'm not an athlete, and I kind of struggled with that identity. And I stumbled across Kelly, and I was like, oh my God, this is somebody who's showing the world that, the Runner's World magazine covers, of all these skinny runners is not what needs to be true, like I can still be strong and I can still be an athlete. And Kelly also is very open about her, why she gets into running, and that running isn't always fun and sometimes it's hard. And she talks about the Dare to Fail challenge, which is also really great. So as we were talking about how do we bring in community and industry and entrepreneurship and support, I was like, Kelly, duh. So I am super excited to have Kelly come in and share with us her story. All right, thanks, Kelly.
You guys are gonna watch me try to navigate Zoom. I've been doing it for 2 years. We were on the Badass Lady Gang adopted Zoom a year before the pandemic, and I still can't get it. So you're gonna watch me try to do a slide, but who knows what's gonna happen? Anything could happen. But thank you for
Kelly,
that.
Just dare to fail, Kelly. Dare to fail.
You guys, there's nothing I am better at than failing and failing better. Those are the pillars of my identity. But yeah, let me try to do this in the chat real quick. I'm very curious to see what everyone's relationship with movement is. Like, what do you do and do you enjoy it? Are you someone who enjoys yoga? Do you do yoga because you think you should and it's going to make you not scream at people when you drive? Do you run? Do you think that running is like the worst thing in the world and you would rather, if you're being chased by a bear, you would rather just give up than, you know, run and be like, I accept my fate and destiny. This is what's happening. Do you climb? Do you dance? Like what do you do and why? Just very curious to see. Running is the worst for me. Yep, I can the bear can eat me. That was me. I used to say like I would run after the ice cream man, but if I was being chased by a bear, I would say, take me, I accept this. That used to be me. Horseback riding, amazing. What else? Weightlifting, awesome. Cross country skiing, judo, that's a great one. Nothing better than kicking the shit out of stuff. Amazing. I'm going to keep reading these, but I'm also going to try to share my screen and do this. And Lord knows I can't for the life of me do this. Here we go. Did we do it? Can we do this? God. Oh, what's happening? See, this is what I'm talking about. Oh, it's loading. Oh, thank God. That's our old logo. We just did a big rebrand, which is very exciting. Look, there I am. Yeah, so I am the creator of the Sports Bra Squad, which is a movement I'll talk about, and the Badass Lady Gang, which is a running community that's really on a mission to redefine what strength looks like. So this is my history with running. Like, I am the self-proclaimed former president of the I absolutely fucking hate running club. I missed over 70 days of school my senior year to get out of PE. I had to go to court. That is how much I do not and did not like movement. But for almost all of my life, I, like so many others, only worked out to try to lose weight. I was convinced that, you know, my body and my size was not thin enough and not small enough, and I was not someone who anyone would find desirable. So I would go to the gym twice a day. I was always on some sort of restrictive diet forever, you know, up until I would say like 2013. I was on some sort of restrictive diet or another, trying to lose weight, and just convinced that my body and my worth was attached to my size. And every once in a while I would try running because I was, you know, like everyone else, I would see thin people running. And I always thought that if you ran, you were thin. So I would always try, I would take off, go down the block, and, you know, feel like I was going to die and be like, nope, running's still not for me. Back to the gym I go. So I got my undergraduate degree in theater, ironically. So after I graduated, I lost my sense of community. I lost my sense of purpose, and I didn't really know what to do. I always joke that I kind of felt like I went to Hogwarts. You know, like, it's very fun to tell people, but then everyone's like, great, what are you going to do with that? Like, what? I had student loans. I had no idea what to do. And I moved in with my parents, got a job as a receptionist at a dermatology office, and I didn't really have anyone. I didn't have any friends here where they live. I had nothing to do. And I had gotten into the habit of going to the gym twice a day. So I'd go in the morning before work, and then I'd go after work. And I was so bored. I was over it. I was tired of going to the gym. I was not enjoying it. I was not having fun. And I started going less and less and less, and started like fixating on the fact that I was probably gaining weight. And I was terrified about that. And it was Thanksgiving Day. And Thanksgiving is a tough day for me because in 2009, I lost my 2009, I lost my younger brother, Scott. He was 16 years old. And holidays are a tough day, especially Thanksgiving. Everyone posts photos. I'm so grateful to be with my family. I'm so grateful for my family. And that's a tough day. Well, normally I would go to the gym and work as hard as I could so I wouldn't have to think about anything. I would use it as a way to run from my life, literally. Not running, of course, God forbid I do that. But the gym was closed. It was Thanksgiving. And I hadn't really slept. And I decided, like, whatever, I just need to move. I need to just do anything to not have to like deal with this grief that I'm feeling. So I put my 14 sports bras on and my two, my shoes that I'd gotten at Nordstrom Rack that I now know were like 18 sizes too small. And I was like, I go to the gym twice a day. I can run now. If anyone can run, it's me. So I take off down the block. I got to the end of the block and I like had to stop to walk. And I was like, this is bullshit. This is total and utter bullshit. How is this possible? I work out like 2.5, 3 hours a day and I can't run down the block. For the first time, I didn't turn around and go home. I was like, I'm just going to walk. Like, I can't go home and get back into bed. So I walked. It took me probably like an hour to go 5K walking and running. I stopped also when I saw a bench just to like think about my life choices. And when I got home, I was exhausted and I went to bed. I was able to go to bed. So I slept a little bit. And the next day I was like, I'm going to do it again. I started just like going. No plan, no rhyme or reason, just stuck with it. 2 months later, my friend convinced me on a whim to run a half marathon with her to do this Disney race. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I can do that. What? I just started running. Like, I can't run a half marathon. That's insane. And she's like, let's just see what happens. You can always go back to the hotel. And I was like, okay. I almost quit. It was like one of the hardest things I've ever done. Anyone who's ever run anything unprepared will attest to the fact that it's not enjoyable. But doing that was like one of the first times I went, oh my God, I just did something that I absolutely, without a doubt, thought was impossible for me, something that I would never be capable of doing. And the entire way I was telling myself that, right? Literally at mile 11, I was like, the hotel's right there. I'm done. I don't need to be doing this. Like, I just started running, maybe one day, but like, nope. It totally changed the way I started seeing where I was and where I was going and all the limiting beliefs I had about myself. A couple months later, decided to run a full marathon. And after I finished that, I literally said to myself, like, if I can run a marathon, there's absolutely nothing I can't do. That was the wildest experience of my life, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I am going to move to New York and I'm going to figure this out. So I moved to New York, get a receptionist job, and then I was going to run a half marathon and I went viral. My sister was waiting for me with a sign. It was 20 degrees in New York City and I wanted to make her laugh while she waited for me to run by her. So I took a selfie of myself with hot guys behind me every mile. And I had no idea no one would ever see it. I spelled hot wrong. Like, it was just for me. It was just for me and my friends and the 5 people who liked my photos, to make them laugh. It went viral. And with that, I was encouraged to start a blog. Everyone was like, you have all this attention. Do something with this. And my whole entire life was like, I don't want anyone to know anything about me or what I was going through or what I was experiencing. I built walls and I was like, starting a blog seems absolutely dumb. It seems like the dumbest thing someone like me who has spent the last 15 years hiding could do. And then someone told me, they're like, well, look, you have an opportunity to like own your name, which is as a keyword, which is very rare and very difficult for people. Worst thing happens, you start this thing and you just delete it, right? Why not? So with my sister's encouragement, I started this blog. It was called Run, Selfie, Repeat. And I wanted to talk about people like me, people who cried on street corners, people who hate running, people who have a really, really complicated relationship with, their bodies and with size and with working out. So I started this blog, which, I always talk about that I kind of had a fast pass, right? Like going viral gave me a bit of a fast pass to have an audience. But with, enough storytelling and with my background of storytelling, I encouraged other women to come on and share their stories. And eventually that led to the Badass Lady Gang, which is where we are today. It's this giant community of women where we are focused on ditching diet culture. We are focused on connecting and moving because we can, not because we think we should, only because we want to. We are just dead set on redefining what strength looks like, because in the running industry specifically, but also everywhere, right? Women are our bodies. That is the society we live in. That is what we are told, that we are bodies to be consumed by other people, to be defined by other people. And that is something that we are pushing hard on. And it always starts with you, right? Like this unlearning that we are all doing is so hard. And we make mistakes, but making those mistakes and trying to do the right thing and do better and learn more is so much easier when you have support of other people. So that's why we started the Badass Lady Gang. We exist to be a safe place in the fitness world because it's expensive, it's intimidating, it's ridiculously judgmental and shame-based, right? We are like vehemently opposed to words like sculpt, shape, tone, all of that stuff. We don't believe in problem areas, right? There's problem areas of the government, but not with our bodies, right? Our bodies are incredible things. They're miracles. We have one body, and we spend our entire lives trying to fix it. Or, we self-objectify, a word that, Dr. Lexi and Lindsay Kite, they recently had this incredible book, More Than a Body, highly recommend. Learning that word was so revolutionary for me, self-objectification, where you live, it's almost like your personality splits and you're watching yourself from the outside, like perceiving yourself as others will perceive you, worrying about your cellulite, worrying about your love handles, worrying about, armpit hair or pit stains, right? Oh, I might have bags under my eyes, all of that. How might other people see me and perceive me? All that. That's why we exist, is to talk about this stuff and to be a place for people to say, like, I haven't worked out in 2 weeks. Life is hard. And it's like, yeah, yes, that's okay. Move because you can, when you can, because you want to, not because you think you should. The last year has been really a wild time for, I'm sure, all of us with Zoom. How do you connect when you can't connect? We used to have chapters in cities all around the world. And then COVID happened and we have to go online, which we always were an online community, but we never were connecting in the way we are today. Creating programs that weren't about virtual races, but were more about, why are you moving right now when the world's on fire? How can this help you? How can you do this in a way that isn't about over exercising, and it's not about like running from your problems or doing it because you don't want to take the time to just sit with your feelings, which is why a lot of people work out. Really taking the time. This is Christina Nungri. This is last year. She was going to run her first marathon, the New York City Marathon. And then COVID happened and it got canceled. And then her father passed away of COVID. So she didn't train the way she wanted to, but she like emailed me and reached out and was like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to do this to honor my father. I want to do this to take back what was taken from me. So I was like, let's do it. Let's rally everyone in the gang who's in the New York City area. Anyone who can go use the bathroom at their apartment along the way, anyone who can show up and give us Gatorade or anything like that. Like, that's what the gang is about. People who can show up at the finish line to be there, give you the day that you want and deserve. That's what the gang's about. One of the big things that I wanted to do is, now that we're offering these training programs, experiences, and plans, how do we do that and be mindful of over exercising? How do we do that and push back on all of the strength work that's out there that preys on women, right? Why are you doing this? Is it because you think you need to be smaller? Or is it because you're chasing that feeling that strong is? We're really lucky in New York City to have Finish Line Physical Therapy, one of like the country's top clinics. And so they have developed all of our strength workouts, and they're short and they're doable. They're 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes long. Strength work is something that I hate and that I'm incredibly bad at. So focusing on like intrinsic motivation and why are you doing this? And can you do this in a way that's attainable and isn't about, abs or ass and all of these keywords that we see all day long. They're really about really strengthening. So not only are you getting hurt because I like to tell everybody we all run like dodos, like we just do. I am not a very gifted athlete. I'm not the best runner, and I don't work on the stuff that I should because I run a company. This is my full-time business. I don't have a lot of spare time, right? I don't have the spare time to be doing all this stuff all day long. Just finding the time to run sometimes is really difficult. So making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck and doing it so that we don't get hurt, because it's not, this is what I tell all my athletes. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hurt, it's when. And if we want to make sure that when that happens, it's the teensiest, weensiest little blip and not something big. And that's why physical therapy is so important. And so many people don't get to go to physical therapy, which is mind blowing, right? I mean, I think we can all agree that our medical system is pretty whack here in the United States. The fact that we don't prioritize movement for life, which is what physical therapy really helps us do, is move well forever, is bonkers. But that's a big component of what we do, is get real physical therapists, plans that aren't about weight loss or size. They're just about really, really, really focusing on getting you stronger so that you can enjoy movement and enjoy your life forever. I started a movement that used to be a body positivity movement, but I've since come to, terms with the fact that body positivity is really just a step in the right direction. The sports bra squad is something that I found myself because I never in a bajillion years thought I would ever be brave enough to run in my sports bra or be able to be seen in a sports bra. But I live in New York City and our summers are pretty brutal, ridiculously hot, and we're already doing the work, right? If I'm training for a marathon or a half marathon, or I'm just going for a 30-minute run, I'm already out there showing up for myself. Why don't I get to believe that my body is fine, that my body is this strong, incredible thing? And if shedding a layer means that I can find a bit of comfort during the warmer months so that I can enjoy the thing that I'm doing, why wouldn't I do that? Why would I be so concerned with what anyone might think or perceive about my body? Why am I doing that to myself? The Sports Bra Squad is really about seeing other bodies and knowing that bodies of all shapes and sizes can be strong and are strong, that we are more than our bodies, right? That is what the Sports Bra Squad is. So every year we have Global Sports Bra Squad Day, where you can find a meetup and join women, because it is the scariest thing in the world. If you haven't done it before, it is like one of those things where you are so hyper focused on what's going on around you and what anyone else might do. It's scary, but having other people there, it reminds you, oh, the fact that I'm caring so much about what other people are saying or might say to me, and not what I think about me or how I feel about how this incredible thing that I have. This isn't about beauty. This isn't about size. It's about me doing this for me because I like this, because I can, because it, does all these other things for my everyday life. So now we have, Sports Bra Squad meetups, all sorts of really, really, really rad stuff with women who are, most of our women, are not athletically inclined. They find it later in life. And that's the Badass Lady Gang. And that's our little gang. I'm so excited that this worked.
It did. Thanks. So Kelly, I'm wondering, can you talk to us about, our group is a bunch of women biomechanists. So one, we gratefully understands the need for physical therapists. We've got a few physical therapists, I'm sure. But can you talk to us about what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur, and what type of, particularly in the sports and fitness space, because a lot of us, I think, have interest in sports and fitness, and what type of hurdles have you faced, or advice would you give to this crew of women trying to maybe do the same thing?
It's been so hard. And I think you touched on it in the beginning, exactly what it is. When I first got into this, the blogs themselves there were no resources for people who were in my shoes, which is the vast majority of runners. They were marathoners. They were talking about paces A pace is like if you run X minutes per mile. They were talking about paces that like could not even fathom ever running, right? Like a 30-minute run felt impossible. And nothing made sense. I didn't have prior experiences with anything. I didn't know what physical therapy was. I thought physical therapy was the thing you did after you got surgery, right? Like none of this made any sense and no one was talking about it. And even today, I have women we try to push them to physical therapy and help them understand why it's there and why prehabbing is so important if you have that resource available to you, if you're privileged enough to have, health insurance that can get you there, that a lot of the times you don't need, a referral to go there. You can just go. So getting started, this became my job pretty quickly, and there weren't a lot of people like me. So I got a lot of pushback. A lot of people came after me looking at it like the pizza, and that I was taking away from elite athletes. I would sign a sponsorship with a big brand and they would have Olympians and then they would have me. And it was like, everyone was like, no, what about these other people? Which, yes, I agree. Like we should be supporting our athletes, but also what are the stories that are being told? Because when I look at the running world and when I look at the health and fitness space, especially 5 or 6 or 7 years ago when I first got started, you were not seeing stories of the person who, you were not seeing Christina's story, why Christina ran a marathon. You were seeing weight loss stories. You were seeing before and after stories. It was very focused on weight, or it was about someone doing something superhuman, which running a 5K for the first time is superhuman in my eyes. That's the story that inspires me, which is the stories that I like to tell. So it was hard. It was hard to find people who got it and who could support me and like help me understand trolling. It was hard to deal with all being so vocal about my size and my body. It was hard to make mistakes. So much of what I did in the early days, I have a podcast now called the Poison Punch Podcast. And I created it because so much of my early stuff was poison punch. It was so rooted in diet culture and consuming what the media was, those stories that we were being told a lot. And I just didn't know better. And today, knowing now the difference between body positivity and adopting a positive body image, one that knows that your body is good regardless of how it looks. It's your body is your body. And it's an instrument, not an ornament. That's more Dr. Lexi and Lindsay Kite that really spoke to me. So turning this movement that started online into something that I could actually make a living from was really tough. How do I make training plans and programs that are by women for women? And why hasn't it really been done before? Why doesn't this exist? We started this as a Facebook group, the Badass Lady Gang. And whenever anyone was like, I'm going to run a 5K or I'm going to run a half marathon or I'm going to run a marathon, what plan should I do? There's 5 or 6 men that everyone goes to because of Title IX. Women could not run marathons. They couldn't participate until way later. So these guys had a 20, 30-year head start in their careers in these giant, companies that they created, these machines where everyone goes to these people for training plans and programs. And everyone I knew was getting hurt from them, right? They weren't adaptive. They weren't cognizant of the fact that women often carry a lot more of the burden of everyday life, whether you're a mom or a caretaker, have a job. Like, how do you balance it all and do these things? So with us, like something that we really focus on is over-exercising. What does that look like? I am a firm believer that whatever you're doing, if they aren't talking about what over-exercising looks like, that's a problem. Why you're doing it, what has intrinsically motivated you? Is it weight loss? That's something to unpack. A lot of our programs, not a lot, all of us, so much of what we do is really about why you're doing it and being okay with pivoting and knowing that if you don't make it to the finish line, that's not a failure. That's not quitting. Progress isn't linear. You have to be open to where you are and sometimes backing off and doing something else because life is more important. I believe that physical exercise and movement is something to complement your everyday life. It shouldn't be your life.
Yeah, I think that's interesting for us. A lot of our group is academic folks, and I think there's a lot of stigma there too. And we lose a lot of women. We talk a lot about this leaky pipeline with women in STEM careers, and how we see it as failure. Like if somebody starts a PhD program and life happens, or they decide it's just not for them, or whatever, and they choose to go a different path, I think our world tells us that's not good enough, and you have failed at this thing, instead of being like, like it wasn't for me. It's just not what I chose to do. I'm happy over here. And so I think there's a lot of parallels that particularly women can relate to, in not just like body image, but also your career. Like how much of this spills over, like your lack of confidence. Are you, less confident in the way that you look, the way that you move, the way that you speak? How can you command attention in a classroom, at a conference? Like there's all these parallels, I think. And something that I was thinking about when you're talking about this is my lab, where I got my PhD, studied elite athletes, right? And elite athletes with leg amputations. And I think we had like a couple of women, maybe, but it was mostly men.
Yeah.
And one of our members recently said she wrote a paper where the majority of the participants in this research study were women, and she got pushback from the editor of a journal saying, but why would you do that? That's weird. That's not representative, because you have too many women. And so I think that's something that we can also take, because we all here study biomechanics, right? Movement. And we can all take that and be like, how can we advocate for equity and equality in our research, and make research that's applicable not just to this elite male athlete, but to the recreational athlete, and to women specific training? Because I think a lot of us study things that could be where we could improve on that. I'm thinking, Sarah, of yours. Since we were just talking about your research, I'm like, there's so many ideas now.
I think what you guys are doing, like, it's so important. And I know it's hard because everybody has so much shit going on, right? Everybody has 1,000 balls in the air. Taking the time to write a blog post for exactly what you guys are doing, taking the time to show up to this, understanding who's doing what, and taking those extra time and steps to say, I know someone who actually is doing that. I'm going to reach out to them very quickly and remind them to do this. I'm doing something. And no, I don't. That's way too egotistical to put my name in there. No. Put your fucking name in there. All of the things that we say to ourselves, we call them parrots, right? The parrots that sit there saying things like, no, don't submit yourself. No. Someone else will if it's good enough. What? Put your curiosity goggles on and say, why am I saying that to myself? And where did I learn that? Why can't I speak up for myself or advocate for myself and be proud of the work that I'm doing? Why can't I share the research that I'm doing? Why can't I help other people by amplifying everything that I'm already doing? Like, that stuff's super important, and it's very difficult, which is why it's so important to belong to a community where you can connect with other people and say it out loud, so that other people can say, wait, no, yes, we are here. We see that. We feel that too. Go for it. Please go for it. And if you don't, we will 100% nominate you. But you have to show up, right? The community is only as strong as you make it. It's hard though.
Have you found over time that those parrots get quieter? So you said you started this a few years ago. Have you found it gets a little bit easier to challenge those notions, or that they're not even coming up anymore? Or is it something you're still fighting? If you don't mind me asking, that's a bit of a personal
No, of course not. I think it's less of that. They squawk less. They just don't have the power. It's easier to see it and say like, oh, right, that's happening right now. And you're saying that. And I know why you're saying that, because this just happened. Oh, I just saw my sister who was talking about this, and she's a very different body type. Okay, yeah. I'm just thinking back to this, and no, we're both in different okay, you're fine, Kelly. It's being able to like take what just happened, figure out why, and saying like, right, no, this is just the way it is. Do you guys remember that Pixar short where the birds are all on the line and there's the one really loud bird? Like, that's kind of the way I think of it. Like, there's lots of little birds, and then there will always be one big bird who's making the most noise. It's being able to like take that big bird and be like, what are you saying? Is that true about myself? Is that rooted in accurate self-talk? It's not even about, positive or negative. It's more like, what am I saying to myself, and why? What just triggered that within me that all this other stuff is starting to happen? And then having the community of people to then turn to if you can't fix it yourself or talk yourself down yourself and saying, this is happening. Help. What? Do you experience this? And then we'll be like, yes, right? It's less about like, do they quiet down? And it's just like, you don't listen to them as much. And when you do, you just are able to say, oh, right, this is why this is happening.
Yeah, I will say, people, I think it's easy to look at somebody from the outside and be like, oh, they're so confident, they're so whatever, right? But I was recently talking about my dealings with imposter syndrome, and somebody was like, what? I'm like, yeah, every day. And I reached out to a friend and I was like, oh, I'm just like really struggling ahead of this job interview, and I'm really just not confident, and I just don't know what I'm going to do. And she sent me the nicest email and was just like, no. And like you're saying, is it accurate? No. And then I just got this long email of like how qualified I am. And she was like, you're amazing. Here's these reasons. Know it, own it, and walk in there and get that job. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you so much. Thank you. But it's true. Like, I think this community can really, help empower us, because we're not in competition. Like, my success doesn't mean you're, not success or whatever, which I think is kind of hard. And I think as an entrepreneur and a researcher, I think they have this in common, that we mostly fail. Like, that's the majority of what we do.
Yes, and learning from it and evolving.
Yeah. And you're like, well, that didn't work. But I think that's also something that we can all work on, is being more resilient with failing and being told no, and being told like you're not good enough and you're not whatever, and being like, you know what, screw you.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be good enough.
Self-efficacy is ironically something that like running taught me, which I never in a million years would have thought that that's what I would have taken away from it. Like, do I believe I will succeed? Why or why not? What does success look like? And what does failure look like? And actually taking the time to define those, because otherwise they live in boogeyman territory, right? We give stuff more power when we don't take the time to like actually define it. And then taking the time to flesh out the worst case scenario. It doesn't work. I don't get the job. So what, you turn into a pumpkin? No, you figure it out, right? It doesn't mean that it's always like wrapped up in a beautiful bow. It rarely is. A lot of failure comes with like heartache and a little bit of devastation, right? It's hard. It's hard to like grapple with that and rumble with that, but you don't turn into a pumpkin. You learn and you keep going. You dust yourself off, you turn to your people, and you keep going. And it makes it less scary to fail. It makes it less scary to leap off that cliff knowing that there's not a net to catch you. Sometimes you're going to crash. That's okay. It's more fun that way.
Yeah. So given that we're a relatively new organization, Anna and Jay founded this last summer, so we're not even quite a year old yet, but we're growing, and we're trying to provide resources for all of these women in biomechanics. But do you have advice for us as an organization, as what you've seen really works in terms of supporting your community, particularly when we're global? Like you said, I mean, we're everywhere. We're Australia, UK, Brazil, Egypt, we're all over the place.
I really think creating a space where people feel like they have a say in what's happening, like true community happens like this. Can you have a community online where people just type? 100%. But people need to be talking. There needs to be this. And I think that was one of the hardest parts about the pandemic, was the lack of face-to-face communication and connection. But Zoom isn't awful. The only Zoom calls that I really look forward to are our Badass Lady Gang calls. We spend the first 30 minutes with a question that's like, what's your unpopular opinion? People, like, getting to know people outside of the thing that we're here to talk about, who you are as a person first. And then we talk about running and working out and all that stuff, so that you can really get to know people on a much more personal level. When we have that, anything can happen. People, it's so much safer to feel like they belong, right? This stuff is so scary. I am like I went to one of my first in-person hangouts this weekend. Like one of my friends was in town and had a barbecue outside with 7 people. And I had been working since like 5 a.m. and I was like, I'm just going to tell her I can't come. I'm so tired. And then I was like, bitch, you haven't hung out with people in like a year and a half. You're already defaulting to, I don't want to, I'm too tired. No, show up. You have to show up. Like, come on. But helping people like understand that the anxieties that they're feeling, the nerves they're feeling, making sure that if people are feeling the fact that like, I'm not seeing myself represented or people represented in this stuff, like speak up. Your leaders are going to make mistakes. Everyone has a stake in this, and it's up to you to speak up and have your voice heard. The community truly is only strong when everyone shows up. So it's not just on you guys. I think sometimes we think like, I can just show up and listen and then I'm out. No, speak up.
Well, that's a good transition. Does anyone have any questions for Kelly? Speak up.
That's hilarious.
Wait for a second in the chat. Yeah, I was recently in a job interview and I was asked about my experience with entrepreneurship, and I was like, well, I founded 2 companies, but then I closed both of them and I wasn't successful. And she was like, the recruiter was like, why would you say that? Like, you were successful because you did something. And I was like, but I didn't meet that, I didn't have $1 million in revenue. I didn't employ a bunch of people. I didn't do whatever. And so I was like, oh, I tried, but I failed at this. And she was like, nah, I don't think you did. Like, that was great that you took a leap and learned from it, which was kind of nice. I was like, thank you, recruiter.
If you knew how much shit I threw at the wall and how much of it did not stick, like most people think I'm so like, they watch it and they're like, I don't know what you do because there's 1,000 things. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't know what people want to hear, right? There may be like a few big movements, but from those 3 movements, there were 100 other things that I tried that did not land and didn't take off. And I did it publicly. Like I fell on my face publicly, constantly.
Okay, well, I think we're going to do breakout rooms, and I think Anna
Ooh.
wanted to do it by career stage, I believe, which is pretty great. And my prompt, unless Kelly has another suggestion, would be to think about what barriers do women face in your specific career stage or area, and how can you help yourself and your fellow women overcome those? Like, I want to be more confident and supportive of each other, and like, let's just, break through these feelings.
I like that one.
I love that prompt too. Thank you. This has been so great, and I feel like that it totally hits on what we are trying to do with this organization is give our women this voice.
It's important work.